3 decades ago, the Power Rangers franchise captured my imagination. Like many of my fellow children of the 90s, I watched after school, joined the official fan club, wore the Halloween costumes, and, of course, collected the toys. While I eventually put those toys away, the flame of my Power Rangers fandom never died. Now, on this podcast, I am re-examining the legendary Mighty Morphin era and the modern comics that have redefined the franchise. It's time to get back to action. Welcome to Summoning the ZORDS, a Power Rangers fan journey. I am your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss the Green Ranger television saga following Green with Evil is the owner of Undiscovered Realm in White Plains, New York, Chris Wilcock. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I've been looking forward to talking Power Rangers with you. We have done it before on my other show, My Comic Shop History. We did a couple of episodes years ago now on the Mighty Morphin movie, as well as the 2017 movie. So those episodes are out there. We will also cover those again on this show down the line. And I'm sure I'll have a different perspective now after going through everything that I'm going through on this new show. But I'm excited to have you here for this. Last month, comic book artist V. Ken Marion and I, we talked about Green with Evil. And now we're looking at the remaining, key critical episodes and arcs in Tommy's Green Ranger tenure before he comes back as the White Ranger. So specifically, the episodes we watch for this, I'll give a quick rundown, and then, of course, we'll unpack everything as we make our way through the episode. Gung Ho, where Tommy and Jason have to learn how to work together. Green Candle, parts 1 and 2, where Rita successfully casts a spell, stripping Tommy of his Green Ranger powers. Return of an Old Friend, parts 1 and 2, where Tommy is back in action. Green Dream, where Goldar and Zed try to accelerate the process of removing Tommy's powers for good. Green No More, parts 1 and 2, where Tommy's Green Ranger powers finally give out for good. And lastly, Missing Green, where the Rangers, but specifically Jason is really dealing with guilt over not being able to save Tommy's powers. So those are the episodes that we watched for this. And man, did I have fun watching these. I don't know what your experience was, but I had such a good time.
Yeah, I just rewatched them all today, so they're pretty fresh in my mind, obviously. I hadn't seen most of these since the original run, honestly. Like I've rewatched bits and pieces. To be honest, I've been waiting to rewatch the whole thing to do it with my son if he has any interest. So I didn't want to do it and then do it again. It was kind of cool to revisit them, without being 10 or whatever I was, 11. I don't even remember how old I was when they came out, but
that's the thing.
Maybe younger.
I think you and I think our experiences are similar in that this was a big part of our childhoods, and then we really have not been watching and rewatching them in the years since. And so it's really fascinating to go back. And I just watched it by myself over the past couple of nights, but I kept saying to my wife, I was like, these are legit good. I mean, yes, the nostalgia factor is there, but even taking that into account, and yes, to be fair, we're watching, some very epic, high stakes, pivotal episodes, but still, man, I was really in it.
Yeah. And that's funny you say that, because I did. So I have the box set that Time Life put out or whatever, years ago. So at one point I did put on the first disc and I was like, I'm going to watch this. And I was like, man, this is so cheesy. I can't believe I didn't realize how cheesy this was. But then watching these, it wasn't cheesy at all. At all. I literally, that was the first thing I noticed in the first 10 minutes. I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty good. And so I was surprised by that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start, as I like to, each time I have a new guest on the show, where, I would love to know a bit about your Power Rangers fan journey. How old were you when you were initially watching? How long did you watch? And I guess any key aspects of the show that really stuck with you and made it resonate with you.
Yeah, for sure. What year? I'm trying to remember now, what year the original run was.
93.
93. Okay, that's what I thought. So I was born late 83. So I was 9, 10, when it started. And I don't think I started watching as soon as it came out. Probably it was probably a couple months into the run. But definitely started watching before all the Green Ranger stuff, way before. And that's another thing I was really surprised. I forgot how many episodes there were. It was 60 episodes in the first season or something like that. It was insane. So I definitely was pretty young, but I was old for Power Rangers, if that makes sense. I remember all my friends kind of making fun of me because I finally got the Dragon Dagger. after months of hunting for it. And I just remember like them just like being like, what's wrong with you? Like, why you have that? That's for like little kids. And I was so happy I had it. And I remember just being like kind of like upset, like, screw you guys. Yeah, I got into it and I got really into it. I mean, like I was obsessed. And my biggest memories, and I think I shared this story with you when you asked me to be on this episode, was like, I remember the O.J. Simpson trial kept interrupting Power Rangers a lot. Like they kept breaking in whenever something big happened. And I remember two key things. One of the Green Ranger episodes got interrupted for me by Kato Kalin testifying in the O.J. Simpson trial. And then my grandfather took me somewhere after school that we weren't supposed to go, and I missed the Green Candle Part 2 as a kid. And it wasn't like now. There was no replays. There was no you missed that. Like I don't think I ever even saw the second one until like 20 years later or something when the DVDs came out. So those resonate with me like crazy. And a quick little story with the Kato Kalin thing. Years later, because obviously we do a lot of Comic Cons, I was in New Orleans, and Kato Kalin used to be the host of Wizard World. He would like run the entertainment stage. And I get in the elevator. Kato Kalin walks in the elevator. We go to the next floor. Jason David Frank walks in the elevator. And I was like, my life has just come full circle. Like, this is crazy. Like, if I could tell my, 9-year-old self that this would happen one day, it would just blow my mind. And I remember calling Fox when they interrupted the thing and complaining. And I'll never forget it. I remember it to this day. I waited on the hold for like 20 minutes, and I was like, they were like, Fox, how can we help you? And the lady's like clearly annoyed before she even said, and I was like, I have a complaint. And she's like, let me guess, you're mad about Power Rangers. And I was like, yeah. and that's burned in my head too. But yeah, I have a lot of good memories of Power Rangers. Big part of my youth.
That's amazing. I mean, first of all, that's surreal that you had that elevator experience. Did you say anything to either one of them?
No. I was kind of just in shock. And like, what am I going to be like? Hey, when I was 10, like this guy interrupted. I should have in retrospect, but I was just like, man, this is. And it was like 8:00 in the morning. It was on a Sunday, and everyone's just exhausted and like sick of being there. But yeah, what are the odds, right? And but yeah. But the toys, you name it. I mean, I was obsessed, like everything about it. The movie, I went to like the first show on the first day, and just a big fan.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, this whole idea of really being out of luck if you miss an episode. I mean, I get it. I remember those days. I talked about this in the last episode when I was talking about my Power Ranger fan journey. Where I mean, I remember having my VCR. I'm a little kid. I mean, it's the early '90s. I'm like, 6, 7, 8, like, and I had my VCR and I was taping these things if I wasn't going to be there. Cause it's not like it is now. And especially these episodes that we're talking about, you miss one of these random episodes in between, you'll be okay. But these were high stakes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's another thing. I made some notes while I was watching, like they're so I didn't realize, like, aside from there being so many episodes, like this Green Ranger arc really goes like over a long period of time. And I don't remember, like, I remember like the major beats of the arcs and stuff like that, but like I don't remember there being so many like interweaving stories, where like it plays back into the other episodes when I was a kid. And I was really surprised by that, and kind of impressed that like it really had that, because I remember, aside from those 2-parters and 5-parters, like nothing really ever linking together, so I was surprised to see that.
Yeah, I have to say, for any Power Rangers fan listening to this, if you haven't watched these episodes together in a block, they play really well. And
yeah, do it.
Again, it really does conjure this sense of the show being even more epic when you're watching all of these back to back. And then I guess one last question, as far as your Power Ranger fan journey, how far into the series did you get? Because I think I mentioned last time, I kind of tapped out towards the end of Zeo. So I made it all the way through Mighty Morphin and through most of Zeo, but I didn't do Turbo or Space or any of that, or anything, beyond that. How far did you get?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. And that's something I brought up to like people so much over the years. It's like, I was so into this show and everything. And it's like I just stopped one day, like somebody flipped a switch and it was just over. And I can't for the life of me remember why or how that happened. I definitely watched some of Zeo, but if that's all a blur to me, and it must have really just been like, oh, it's different suits and different Rangers now. Like, I don't care anymore. That's all I can think is what happened. But I don't have much memory after that. Like, I never saw the second movie until much later. So I guess the movie came out, and I probably had like a year after that, as best I can remember.
It's so interesting to hear you say that, because, and I won't rehash what I said last time, but that was so similar to my experience. Like, I wish I could say like, oh, I know I stopped watching for this reason. It was just, and the thing that's even crazier in my case, like what you just described, like, oh, maybe because they were, changing out the costumes and all that stuff. It wasn't even that. Like, I liked Zio. Like, I really liked it. I was excited when Jason came back as the Gold Ranger. I really couldn't tell you what it was that I was just done at a certain point.
Well, how old? I was older. So like, how old were you though when Zio was out and stuff like that? Because that could have been it too. I was probably pushing 13 or something by that time, 14. So I'm like chasing girls or something.
So I was like 9 or 10. It's like 9 or, yeah.
So that's even weirder. Like for you. Because like, what were you doing at 9 or 10 where you were like, I'm done with this,
Well, comic books. I mean, so I wonder if that maybe played into it a little bit as well. I did, like I said last time, there was definitely this tipping point with kids in my class where, for the first few years, like everyone was into it. And then I think when I was in 3rd grade at the end of Mighty Morphin, people were kind of falling off, but it was still popular. And by 4th grade, the Zio year, like there were only a few of us left. And I'm sure that played a role, but
definitely. It was probably the same with me too.
Yeah. I just wish I could pinpoint something more specific, but
I know. It's so weird because like I can remember like crystal clear stuff from like pre-K and kindergarten, but I can't remember why I stopped watching one of my favorite things ever. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how popular it still is and it stayed. I was going to say like maybe it took such a downturn in popularity if we're all having the same experience, but didn't seem like it because it stayed on forever. It's still on. So
I know we're coming up on the 30th anniversary. It's really amazing. And that's, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, to celebrate it and to go back and, see it with fresh eyes, 2022 adult eyes. It's fascinating. And what's funny is that coming into this podcast series, I think, I hate to say forcing myself, but motivating myself to read the Boom Studios comics, that was a huge part of why I wanted to do this podcast. And the comics will be a big part of the podcast. In fact, our next couple of episodes will be devoted to the first couple years of the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger series that Boom put out. But after this viewing experience over these past couple of episodes, I really the show and the comics now are really hand in hand for me. I'm excited because the way I've designed the rest of our upcoming episodes will be sort of weaving in and out, in between the show and the comics. And I'm way more excited now than I thought I would be to be rewatching these episodes. So it's been fun.
Cool. Yeah, I only have like a little bit of experience with the comics, and I have a lot of them, especially Shattered Grid and that whole run I have. And that's something I really wanted to dive deep into. Maybe I will now after rewatching some of this stuff. But yeah, I don't want to like get ahead of ourselves here, but real quick before we get into this, what portion of it does what you're going over cover Shattered Grid and all that, or are you not getting into that?
We'll be getting there. There.
Cool,
but we'll
okay. I'm excited because I want to listen to that. Yeah.
That'll come a little bit later. But the reason we started with Green with Evil and then these episodes that we're talking about now is that the first arc of the Boom comics picks up after Tommy's been freed from Rita's spell. And I haven't read it yet, but from what I understand, it really delves into what he was dealing with, mentally, emotionally after going through that, which, the show didn't necessarily have the real estate for or the equipment for.
Oh yeah, at all. Yeah.
So it'll be cool. But again, rewatching these episodes gives you that context and it's awesome. So as far as overall impressions of the episodes we watched, one of the theses that I put forth in the last episode was I felt like Green with Evil was ultimately more of a Jason story. As much as it introduced Tommy, I know it's it's the Green Ranger arc. I get it. But watching those episodes, Jason's the one who has to rally the team when they feel like they've lost. Jason's the one who's fighting Goldar powerless in the dark dimension. Jason's the one who ultimately frees Tommy from the spell and invites him to join the Rangers. That was the thing. And it was kind of surprising as I was watching it. I was like, oh, I feel like this is more of a Jason story. And Tommy, I wished that in that arc, there had been any moment where Tommy were resisting the spell or anything like that. Like he's really just puppeted throughout the episodes. So it was really interesting now to go into these episodes because watching these, I was like, okay, now I get why I and everyone else love Tommy so much, because you do see his heroism in these episodes. It's on full display. And I think these episodes cement his legendary status.
Yeah, definitely. And I do feel like he was, not that any of them were like setting the world on fire with Oscar performances, but like I feel like he was on the higher end of the performance, scale. At least in these episodes where he was front and center. And he was like the new exciting thing. And I don't know. It just and really honestly, like I think it's just that the dragon vest, like the dragon armor, right? Like he just stood out. He was the one that he had the coolest weapon, he had the coolest Zord, everything about it was cool. So
I know.
And I was never a Red Ranger guy. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I don't know. As I'm rewatching these, I've come to favor Red Ranger, even just a little, like a hair ahead of Green Ranger. But these episodes here with Tommy I thought were so strong. The things that really resonated the most with me, I think, were, and you were getting at this before, the callbacks to prior episodes, which I don't know that you always got a ton of in the show, but. For example, in Green Candle, when Jason goes to the dark dimension to try to get the candle, they reference the fact that he's been there before. So
Goldar when he's like, "Good to see you again" or whatever. Yeah, I noticed that too. That was interesting. Things
like that, or again, even in that last episode, Missing Green, where Jason's dealing with his guilt over this, and again, it goes back to that, all the way back to the Green Candle story, where he had to make the tough call to actually leave to go help the other Rangers, and he was like, "I should have stayed. I should have gotten the candle." I appreciated stuff like that, and I also appreciated that I felt like these episodes allowed for some true, like, genuine character moments. You get the budding Tommy Kimberly romance. Again, you get Jason's guilt, Tommy's own arc, his own disappointment, but ultimately acceptance over losing his role as the Power Ranger. And there's a bittersweetness. There's a very bittersweet quality to a few of these episodes, and a couple of them end on surprisingly and unusually somber notes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was surprised by that too.
How about you? What were some of the your overall impressions of after watching these episodes?
Yeah, I mean, you're taking a lot of my points for sure. No, it's fine. It's fine. But it's funny, like we were on the exact same page with a lot of the stuff. Like almost all my notes are a lot of the things you just said. I don't know. It was just again, being surprised by how serious it was in this run, and again, the throwbacks, like you said, I made a note about that. Like in what was the last episode? Green Gone or whatever.
Missing Green,
yeah. Like Jason literally says, yeah, like you said, I should have got that candle. And that's like 30, 40 episodes back at that point, if not more. So that was pretty cool. And being surprised by how not cheesy these were. But some of the effects were, that's something I wrote down, like in the Green Cat, like when the little rainbow like sparkles coming off of it. And I don't know if you remember, like when Tommy's in those like handcuffs, I was like, wow, this is like top tier 1993 effects. But yeah, I don't know. It reinforced how much I loved the Green Ranger for sure. It was cool to rewatch all these arcs. And it was funny seeing like Jason and Tommy interacting, knowing like they hate each other's guts in real life. So like looking back on it with that perspective was interesting to me, especially when he's like, like Jason's always like saying nice things about him and blah blah. And I know like he's probably hating it the whole time. So that was a different way to view it. Also, seeing the Red Ranger with the dragon shield. So like because I missed that episode. For like years and years when all those toys were coming, I'm like, when did this happen? Like, I don't remember this at all. And it was cool to like get to rewatch that finally. And I was like, oh yeah, it was the second part that I didn't get to see.
Well, so it's actually the first time that happens is in Gung Ho.
Okay.
Which I know you didn't get a chance to watch.
Yeah, that's the only one I didn't get to rewatch.
Because I sprung that on you very, very last minute. Originally I was planning to cover that in the last episode. And then I was like, Green with Evil, we had more than enough to talk about. And so I kind of included it in this viewing for myself. But that's the first time that it happens. And yeah, it's such a cool... So that's the thing. I think there's so much to be said for that shield, because it's like, it's awesome on Tommy. And then when someone else gets it, it's like, oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's really, really cool. Well, how did he get it in Gung Ho?
Okay, so Gung Ho, actually, no, before we let's get into the individual episodes, and we'll kind of lay it out. But before that, we'll take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Acme Comics is a locally owned and operated full-service comic book store in Greensboro, North Carolina, for people of all ages and walks of life. Since 1983, this 9-time Eisner Award nominee uses their collective knowledge and resources to connect you with the best material available. They pride themselves on their significant contemporary and vintage back issue selection. Mail order subscriptions to new releases are available, and all offerings are available to anyone, anywhere, via mail order. Follow Acme on social media and eBay, listen to the Acme Cast on all podcast services, and visit acmecomics.com for much more. Film lovers and filmmakers should check out this family of film festivals: Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, Point Lookout on Long Island, and In the Cut in Bloomfield, New Jersey. I was fortunate enough to have my work shown at these festivals, and I found them to be very enjoyable and well-run events. Submission information for filmmakers, as well as details about the festivals generally, can be found at filmfreeway.com. Follow the festivals on social media for news and updates about events, discounts, tickets, and more. Also, be sure to listen to the Hang On to Your Shorts and Cullen on Film podcasts, available via a shared universe network. Fat Moose Comics is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Established in 1982 and currently under new ownership, Moose sells a wide selection of new and old comics from every publisher, action figures, graphic novels, posters, statues, and more. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany the next time you're in the Garden State, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Flat Squirrel Productions is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP, that's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions, to save 10% on your order, and it helps support the show. Thank you. Aw Yeah Comics celebrates and promotes everything that is wonderful about comics, toys, artwork, and the joy they bring to people. Visit them in person at one of their 3 locations: Harrison, New York, which happens to be my local comic shop, Skokie, Illinois, or Muncie, Indiana. If you have children and have been looking for a family-friendly store, look no further. Join Aw Yeah for exciting events, including creator signings, how-tos, and more. Visit awyeahcomics.com and follow Aw Yeah on social media for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Aw Yeah. And we're back. Okay, so as promised, let's start with Gung Ho. Again, I know you didn't have a chance to watch, no sweat. I'll lay it out really quickly. I mean, what's funny about it is a lot of screen time in this episode, like a surprising amount of screen time, is devoted to this tag team ninja tournament that Tommy and Jason are participating in. In fact, the episode concludes with the tournament, and I clocked it. It's about 5 minutes, which, in terms of screen time,
that's 25% of the
episode. It's an eternity. Yeah. There's no Zord battle in this episode. It's kind of unusual in a couple of respects, but the episode starts with Tommy and Jason. They're practicing for this tournament, and they're not in sync. It would have been cool, and I think this will be a theme on this podcast. Bear with me, people. But again, I know the show wasn't built for this, but it would have been cool if they had gotten into why a little bit more. If there had been any talk of, maybe Jason felt threatened, right? That now there's this new, very powerful member of the team. Like, they don't get into any of that, but it's fine. They're not syncing up. They're both, trying to take the lead, things like that. At the same time, Rita creates super putties. Do you remember super putties?
Oh, yeah.
So she creates these super putties and sends them against the Rangers. And the only way to defeat the super putties is to go to this like mountaintop and obtain these special weapons. And of course, when we get to that point, we're in the Japanese footage, and they even have the name of the Super Sentai show on them. They're like these little blasters. And according to IMDb trivia, we never see them again in the show, but they end up being key to this episode. But Zordon, knowing that Tommy and Jason are having this interpersonal conflict, pairs the two of them up. So while the rest of the Rangers are trying to deal with the super putties, he sends the two of them to try to obtain these weapons. And along the way, they encounter Titanus, the carrier Zord. First appearance, I believe. And they have to work together. And it's in that moment where, Jason says something to him like, I don't know, I can get up the hill faster, but you're better with the sword, something like that. And so they really have to work together. And I think Tommy's like, oh, I'll cover you. And he gives Jason the shield for added protection as he's going up the hill, something like that. So that was the first time that he got it. And it was like, that was cool to see.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And they ultimately, of course, obtain the blasters, and they're able to defeat the putties, and Tommy and Jason, compete in and win this tournament. And it's, again, I mean, it goes on. It's an extended fight sequence. What's funny too is that their opponents are these fully clad ninja fighters brought in by Bulk and Skull. Like, they're in full, head to toe traditional ninja garb, and Tommy and Jason are shirtless. And it's like, what was this, like shirts and skins? It's like so weird.
That's great. Yeah.
But look, kudos to those guys. And Ken and I talked about this last time. Like one of the things that I appreciate so much more now watching these episodes, not the shirtlessness, but their physical ability. It's like the fact that like they were doing the fighting. I think there's so much to be said for that. It's like why the show worked, especially for us as kids. I mean, it's so dynamic. It's really kinetic when you see them doing that.
100%. Like even in the first episode I watched, like the first minute of it is Tommy fighting Zach in the juice bar or whatever. And I was like, wow, this is really impressive. And then Zach's doing all his dancing stuff and things like that. And like, I just forgot like how much of that really was them, and especially for their age, it's really impressive.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, so anyway, I mean, like that was Gung Ho, not the most critical episode, but I included it because I thought it was interesting. It's one of those instances where you get, more of a sense of what's going on between the characters and this idea that there's this conflict between them that they have to work out. So it was kind of a cool one to watch. I would recommend it if you have time down the line.
I'm going to throw it on after this. That is really important because like that is something that they really should have dove more into with Jason and Tommy because, it was there on the surface, but you're right. Like that's kind of like high concept for little kids. So, yeah.
Although, I will say this, and, we can jump around. We don't have to, strictly stay within each episode. I'll say that there are, of course, there are always the messages that they're conveying for the kids, but I feel like they work in the, some of the final episodes that we watched. I guess it's during the Green No More 2-parter where the new bad kids in town become Zed's Dark Rangers. And prior to that, they're facing off against our kids. And then at the end though, right, they all, convene at the juice bar. And, I think it's Kimberly is the first one to be like, hey, maybe they just need some friends, right? And Jason goes up and he pays for their sodas. $4.50 at the juice bar. Only $4.50 for five sodas.
That's a great deal.
It's the 90s. It was a long time ago, 30 years ago. But it was one of those things where I was watching that and I said to myself, it's a good message for the kids. And I was like, you know what? It's also a good message for me now. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
It's so easy to write people off or to butt heads with them. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes maybe you just need to extend a hand in friendship.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm sure we could apply a lot of the stuff in these episodes too.
I'm getting a lot out of this. It's really good. But going back to Titanus for a second, what if any memories of that Zord and or the toy do you have?
Not a lot. He would just show up every now and again. I think one episode in this run that we watched, like they formed Ultra Zord, and that's it. I only remember it a handful of times. I never had the toy when I was a kid. I only had a few of the Mighty Morphin like Zords. I had all of the Thunder Zords though. So, and even I got later in life when they did all the legacy ones and the metal ones, I bought all of them except Titanus because I had no attachment to it. And it was like $300 or $200. And I was like, I'm not spending that. Wish I got it now because it's like $1,000. And like, it was on clearance at Toys R Us forever. And I still didn't get it. But, so even now I have all the toys, but I don't have Titanus.
It's so funny. Titanus, I don't think I ever had Titanus. I know you and I have talked a lot about Dragon's Den. There were a couple locations in Westchester County where we grew up. And I feel like I tried to get one there at some point and it didn't work out for whatever. I don't know whatever happened, but I don't think I ever had it.
It was probably expensive too. Like it was big.
Yeah, it was big. And I guess I didn't have like you, I didn't have that much of an attachment to it. It's like, they would call it forth every now and then. But here's the thing, and this is more of an overarching idea about the show that is becoming clearer to me now as I rewatch these episodes. So in Gung Ho, Titanus, we find out, is ultimately sent by Zordon. Like that was a plant in order to foster this cooperation between Tommy and Jason. Titanus was actually not trying to attack them. But it was at the behest of Zordon. And Zordon describes Titanus as a friend, an ally. And that kind of goes hand in hand with one of the things that I've been realizing about the show, which is this melding of the mystical and the mechanical that I don't think I ever really fully appreciated. Now, I'm sure, because we've talked about a lot of stuff. I'm not a fantasy guy. I love comics like science fiction, but I'm not a fantasy guy like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. I love that people love it. Not really my thing. So watching this, I think I always gravitated more to the scientific side of the show, whatever, gadgets Billy was tinkering with and the morphers, like that piece of it. But it's dawning on me now how much of a mystical aspect this show had. And especially with the Zords, right? Like
I never thought about that.
Like when the Zords are called forth, they're in their natural primordial habitats. Like, doesn't make any sense from a scientific perspective.
No, it doesn't actually, now that you're breaking it down. Yeah, that's true. I mean, but even with Rita casting spells and dark dimensions and, you know, magic wax that steals your powers, and you know, there's a lot. You're right, 100%. And
it's now look, for people listening, you might be like, "Of course, you idiot!" Of course, I'm just. It's one of those things that I just don't think because it's not what I gravitate towards. So I just don't think I ever really honed in on it. And now as I'm watching, it's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, you know, I never thought about it either. It's really funny that, and I am into all that stuff, and like I played Magic since I was a little kid and stuff. So maybe that's why also like I just. Never, I was like, oh, it's just everything I watched has stuff like this in it or play or whatever. So I never thought it broke it down. But yeah, that's a really, really good point. It's funny.
Yeah. So that was Gung Ho. And then from there, we went into Green Candle parts 1 and 2, which according to IMDb trivia, was originally intended to be Tommy's swan song, except for a planned cameo. I don't know if you remember the Doomsday 2-parter.
Yeah.
He makes a little cameo appearance at the end of that during the Power Ranger celebration. But aside from that, like Green Candle was meant to be the farewell. But then all of the fans really rallied behind the character, and they decided to bring him back, which makes so much sense.
I wonder how they rallied behind though back then, like because,
letters.
Like, yeah, I guess, but like, didn't they have like season 1 wasn't done at that point? Like, you know what I mean? Like they just added it all back in. I'm just curious. You know, there's no internet. There's no, you know, like you said, there's letters, but. You know, I guess the toys probably sold like crazy. That's one thing. That's usually what drives everything. Like, we're selling 10 times more of this one character. We need more of them. Yeah, that's not surprising. That happens so much with shows like where like in Stranger Things, Steve was supposed to die in season 1 and he was the most popular character. So they're like, we can't get rid of him. It happens a lot. You know, it's funny. So, and it's always that pretty boy guy. So I guess there's that too.
The hair. You know,
yeah, it's the hair. If you have long hair and you're making a cameo, you're good. Yeah. Look at Eddie. Everybody. Yeah. Not to get off subject.
I know, but there's something to be said for that. But and that's the thing, because I was looking at going through IMDb and because I was curious, I don't remember this from being a kid, how long Tommy was gone for, but it's a good, 15 episode stretch at least or something.
When I was scrolling through, like trying to find the next episodes to watch out of the list, I'm like, geez, there's a lot of episodes without Tommy, and it's like a long time before he comes back, and like it's just all a blur to me. But I mean, I can attest, like I was obsessed with Tommy when I was a kid. Like even I remember there's like this episode where he has like this like fishnet shirt on, and I was like, I need a shirt. Like I'm like 10 years old, you know, like I would have got my ass beat if I wore that shirt outside by my friends. But like I wanted it so bad, and I remember Dragon's Den, the big one on Central, had this yin yang necklace, and Tommy had one for a while. I don't know if you wore it all the time or whatever, but I was like, I need this yin yang necklace, and I obsessed over it for like 3 months until my mom finally gave in and bought it for me. And like just anything that he did, I was obsessed with. So I can attest for the popularity. I mean, still, by far, he is Power Rangers. You know what I mean?
It's true. I know he's endured. He came back. I know he had a lengthy tenure when he came back years later, and continues to pop up. Yeah. So, and again, I really think these episodes, in large part, really cemented that status. They really elevated him, because you see, he's grappling with something in these episodes, the loss, the potential loss of his powers, the actual loss, the gradual loss in the later episodes, right? Because when he comes back, he gets charged up, but it's not meant to last. And so there's, we didn't watch all these episodes, but I believe that in those episodes, they continually reference the fact that, he only has so many morphs left in him, so many battles. So I think,
go on. Sorry.
No, you go.
I was going to say, like, that's something that stood out to me too, where like, he's like, I got one fight left, and it's just like random monster number 7. They're like, all right, I'm ready to go. I figured maybe you save them for like some extra threats, like I don't know. That was something that jumped out at me too.
It was so funny because there's this whole conversation. I know exactly what you're talking about, and there's a whole conversation in the command center where Zordon's like, all right, Tommy, it's ultimately your call, whether you want to save it or go into battle now. And it's like instantly he's like, count me in, guys. It's like, do you want to think about this a little bit more?
Yeah. I don't know.
But as far as Tommy's absence, once he comes back in Return of an Old Friend, he's basically there after Green No More. He's MIA for just a couple before he comes back in White Light. And I guess that was probably just to make people think that he was actually gone.
Is it just a couple?
It's just a couple.
Really? So like, I mean, I don't know if you remember when it originally aired, how it aired. Like they put part 1 on at the beginning of the summer and part 2 didn't air until like Labor Day, like after school started again. So it was like, you got out of school, that was the last thing. And then all summer you had to wait to find out who the White Ranger was. And like in retrospect, obviously it was Tommy, but like, and you know, that was the guess, but like people still weren't sure of it. And I remember like how stressful that was, like the whole summer, like just waiting to see that second part. It was a big deal. The only other time I ever remember anything like that is like when the Simpsons shot Mr. Burns and you had to like wait all summer to find out who it was. Like it's the only time. Like it was really good marketing because every kid on the playground, that's all they were talking about.
So you know, we'll actually cover the dawn of the White Ranger era. We'll get to that down the line on the show, but it's so funny you say that. I remember.
Sorry for the spoiler, guys.
Yeah,
Tommy's the White Ranger.
What's so fascinating is, this is a little tangent, but it's relevant, so bear with me, folks.
Yeah.
Last month, Ken and I were talking about the Super Sentai series that this was based on and that this used footage from. And at the time, neither Ken nor I had ever really delved into that. Just to keep the audience posted, since then, Ken actually bought the first box set of the Super Sentai series, and he's gotten like really into it. And I'll borrow it from him when he's done. So we'll likely cover that in the future. But what's so funny is that in the Japanese show, the White Ranger's a kid. And so I watched a little bit of the White Ranger footage from the American show. And I don't know, if this might ring a bell for you, but like the first time that he morphs and he calls on his Zord, he's like jumping around. He's like manic almost as the White Ranger. He was a kid. That. Yeah.
That's so funny. I never realized that he was a kid. I should dive into that too. I don't know why I never watched it, but as a kid, you didn't even know that was a thing,
No, that's
where were you going to get a copy of it? Right.
Yeah. I don't know yet. But going back to who the White Ranger was, I remember making a bet. This was, I think, second grade. I remember making a bet with 2 kids in the class, and I was convinced. I put my money on Richie, the new kid, which, again, now as an adult, you look at it as that he's clearly a red herring. He's clearly meant to make you think, oh, this is a new character. He's going to become a ranger. And I put my money on him. We didn't bet much, thankfully. I think it was like a quarter, but I was, quickly proven wrong. But yeah, no, I was like, I fell for it. Tommy was gone for a couple of episodes. They introduced this new character. I was convinced that's who it was going to be.
And that's why I was so surprised. Like, I felt like that was such a long time without Tommy there that it was like even remotely possible that it wasn't him. But it's funny to hear you say that.
So Green Candle, this, going back to the bittersweet moment, this 2-parter is really bookended with Tommy pining for Kimberly, right? In the beginning, he's, practicing with Zach, and Zach's like, hey, you're going to ask Kimberly to the dance. And Tommy's, he's not working up the nerve. And then, of course, we get to the end. His powers are gone, but he's able to make his move with Kimberly. And, it ends on that hopeful note. But I mean, what stood out to you about this Green Candle 2-parter?
I don't know. I guess, I don't know if anything like particularly stood out to me. Like I was kind of like awash in like nostalgia for it because like that's like the first memories I have of Power Rangers. So I probably did get into it not too long before that. So it's just kind of like revisiting that and just, I don't know. I didn't like pick out anything in particular. To me, those are probably like the two, that and when the White Ranger comes in are like the most iconic episodes to me. So, and when I think of Power Rangers, that's immediately when my mind goes to. Yeah. So I guess there's that. But.
So as I'm sure people remember, right, Rita Repulsa creates this candle, and when it burns out, Tommy's powers will be gone. Oh, this was another instance where I realized I don't think I still don't know that I fully understand how their powers work, but I think it's clearer to me now. My understanding after watching all these episodes with the candles and the coins, it seems like they are imbued with certain powers, and the coins are the key. And I actually went back to the pilot, and Zordon does say that the coins, unlock are the key to your power. Because as I was watching this, it was a little unclear to me what exactly. Like at one point, I thought they had Tommy's morpher, all like that Goldar had taken the morpher, but then Tommy still had it, but his powers were still draining. And then at the end, Zordon is able to preserve the power by having Tommy transfer the coin to Jason. I don't know. I still don't know that I totally get it.
That was a little weird. I didn't understand like how that stopped it and why they didn't just do that immediately.
Right.
And why, you know, he was able to then get it back later. Why they didn't just do that right away. Like, all right, I'll transfer it to you and then I'll take it back. All right, problem solved. So yeah, that was weird. You know, the movie that came out like a few years ago kind of dives a lot more into the power grid and all that stuff. So I think that kind of made it a little more clear for me. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that it was very defined back then. You know, it's like probably one of those things where they're filling in the blanks now.
Well, that's the thing. I had to remind myself, all right, don't overthink this, because there were a few instances. That was one. Also, their level of difficulty in accessing this dark dimension, because I feel like sometimes in Green Candle, right, you know, Billy is building these like prongs in order to create a gateway to the dark dimension. But then other times I feel like they just teleport in. So I don't know. I felt like a little inconsistent there. Sometimes they get in, you know, when they don't need to kill as much time, they can just teleport in, but we have some time to fill. So we got to figure it out.
I noticed that was one thing I noticed too. Like there's a couple times I noticed it with Goldar more than anything, where like he repeats what he's saying 2 times in a row, just because clearly they had to fill out the video footage from the Japanese voice actor. So who knows? It probably is something like that. Like, you know, they just work with what they had and go from there. But let me ask you, I mean, as a kid, did you ever stop and think like, hey, how are they going to exactly?
No, that's the thing. And I hope people know, as we talk about all this stuff in these episodes, it's not, you know, it's not meant to be nitpicky. It's not meant to dump on the show. I love it. It's just, I'm thinking about these things for the first time. As
you should, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, some of these things that, would never have dawned on me as a kid. It's like, oh, you know, it makes you think now. But, and one more thing along those lines, you know, putting the super putties aside, they're in their own category. But otherwise, you know, I feel like the level of difficulty associated with the putties, that too varies, right? Most of the time, they're just sort of a minor inconvenience to the Rangers. But when, you know, we're in one of these stories where one of the Rangers needs to be abducted, all of a sudden the putties,
they're all tied up.
They're just, like they're on top of you. There's so many of them. They teleport you out right away. So I felt like that was, you know, a little wonky there too.
Yeah, maybe send like, you know, 50 putties too, you know, instead of like 5 every time.
Which putties do you prefer? Like the original version or the Z version?
I like the Z ones, I think. I just like their outfit better too with the stupid Z. It's the smallest little things, but like to me, that's what I think of when I think of them.
I think those were the ones that really cemented in my head the idea that when you hit them in the chest, they disintegrate. Because I remember like watching the earlier episodes, that doesn't happen. And I initially said, wait a minute. And then I realized, that when Zed comes in, we got the different version of the putties. One other funny thing, and you mentioned this before. So, you know, Rita creates this candle, and then Goldar and the putties abduct Tommy, and they bring him to the dark dimension chamber. And, you know, Tommy's watching the candle burn. It's still a little unclear why Tommy actually needed to be there. I think later on they made it clear that that accelerated, like him being there accelerated the process. All right. But what you mentioned earlier, where Goldar puts these, energy chains on him, and then Goldar leaves, and it's like they're around his hands. Why can't he still walk over to the candle and blow it out?
Blow it out, kick it over, anything. And my first thought was like, why doesn't he just blow it out? Like, because I don't know. And then like Goldar's like, I bet you want to just blow it out or something like that, but I won't let you. So I was like, oh, okay. At least they like went over to that, because I was expecting them to just have him stand there. But I didn't. You know what? I really didn't even think about that.
Now, it's this very smoky chamber. So maybe his feet were immobilized and we didn't see it. You know, we don't know exactly how these energy chains work, but it just made me laugh that he's like, I can't get there. It's like, dude, it's just your hands. Even if your legs were tied, you hop.
Yeah,
do anything you can.
It's anything. Yeah, I don't know.
But honestly, what stood out to me most, other than the Tommy Kimberly piece, because that was a new dynamic that you didn't, typically the show wasn't built for romance, especially in between members of the team. So I thought that was cool. But also, again, it always goes back to Jason for me. The fact that Jason returns. Jason's like, I've been here. Like, I've been down this road. I fought Goldar in this dimension. I can do this. And he really is faced with this dilemma when he has to leave. And the fact that, like we said before, it later comes back to haunt him, I really thought was a nice touch. So actually the Jason piece of it all really kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I was like, I will say again, I'm definitely not like a big Red Ranger guy, but I did
enjoy him more rewatching it now, and he seems like more serious and more like, I know there's like a big section of the fan base that like, you know, he's the Ranger, like the Red Ranger, he's the leader, he's blah, blah. And I just never felt that way, but I understood it a lot more rewatching it for whatever reason. Also, I don't know why in my head for some reason I remembered like I thought there was like a triangle between like Jason, Kimberly, and Tommy. And I think now that I'm thinking about that, I think I was just thinking about Saved by the Bell with like Slater and Zach and Kelly. And I must have like transposed that onto that. But so I was waiting for that too. Like I always thought like they were in more of a competition, or you know, as leader of the team, as love interest, as everything. But yeah, I don't know how I made that up.
It would fit.
Yeah.
Right, it would definitely fit. So I can certainly see that. And then, of course, yeah, the farewell in the command center where Tommy does transfer the coin and the shield over to Jason. I think that's something that always stood out to me, and it's there, right? See, now I wonder, I might be conflating this with Green No More, but I think
I just watched it, so I could tell you.
All right, at the end of Green Candle, is that when he's shieldless and he's glowing green as his body returns to normal?
Yeah.
Okay.
He gives them the thing. I'm 99%. I think so. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
I think that was it. So that was, Ken and I were talking about this last time, and I know you and I have talked about this before too. Do the Rangers have quote unquote powers when they're unmorphed?
I don't think so.
All right. I don't either.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think like they're just good martial artists or acrobats.
All right. Well, that lines up with my understanding. You know, we talked about this last time. I know in the movie they had enhanced abilities even before they morphed. The new movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, my understanding with the show. So it was just like when Tommy was transforming back, and you know, clearly his body was going through this transformation, and Zordon says like, oh, his body is returning to his normal state. I didn't know what to make of that.
I don't know either. I think in the new movie though, like the suits were a part of them, right? It was like organic, like almost like Venom or something, right? Yeah, so that makes more sense that they would have abilities. But
so Tommy's powers are gone. You know, that was meant to be his swan song, save for the cameo in that Doomsday Story, which was a cool cameo because you're not expecting it, and he shows up at the celebration. So that was a nice touch. But then we get to Return of an Old Friend. Now, one thing I mean, you know, we knew going in what it was going to be. And maybe as kids, we weren't dialed into the credits, so maybe this doesn't matter. But they did credit Jason David Frank, not in the opening credits, but in the credits during the episode at the beginning of it. And I felt like they should have held that back because when he listen, you want to talk about badass epic moments? When we get to the end of Return of an Old Friend Part 1, and the Rangers have been forced to hand over their coins to Goldar to save their parents who have been put under a spell and transported to the Dark Dimension. And they're broken, they're defeated in the command center, and they're like, our coins are gone. And Jason goes, we still have one. And then we cut to the youth center, and you see the footsteps.
Oh, yeah.
Walking in, and the music play. Like, it is such a cool moment.
Yeah, that was pretty epic. That was really, I noticed that too. That's something I wrote down. Like, unusually, like, epic. They made him, like, really badass. Like, even I knew who it was going to be. And for, like, the first second, I was like, wait, is this not Tommy for some reason? Like, so yeah, good job.
That was I mean, you got to give them credit. They really executed that well. That's the thing. Even knowing that, it still really worked, man.
Yeah. I really was impressed by that.
You know, in part 1 of that story, you know, there's this, you know, Parents' Day, right, at the youth center.
Yeah.
It seems to be school sponsored, but they're holding it at the youth center.
Yeah,
because that's
you have to have a venue, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd assume they have a gym at the school, right? But
I love how. What were your impressions of their parents?
Yeah, I found that pretty interesting too. You know, and then they got really like drama filled with Kimberly and her divorced parents and blah 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 blah. Just a reason to get them outside, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was kind of stereotypical. I felt like, you know, they fit like exactly what you would think. But
yeah, it did get a little after school, especially with Kimberly and Trini outside, where, you know, Kimberly's like, I feel like it's my fault, and Trini's like, how could you think that? You know, they both love you.
Yeah, a very special episode of Power Rangers.
Yeah, today on a very special Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. What struck me was how the parents also wore the appropriate colors.
Oh, you know, I didn't even put that together. I must have like glanced down while that part was on.
Yeah, it was funny to me. I mean, really. So Zach's parents are in purple. They're not wearing all black. They're in purple. But otherwise, the rest of the parents, or at least one of the parents, is dressed, with the appropriate color. And the other thing that struck me too is Jason's dad. They really played him as like a meathead. He loses the arm wrestle battle with Trini's dad, and I don't know, that was just kind of what struck me about him. But
yeah, but I mean, Jason's kind of a meathead. I mean, that's not really that far off.
I guess I feel like the father was in another category though. But how do you think? I mean, look, this is a whole other conversation about, where they get their clothes and all of this, but it's like, how do you think the parents end up with the same color?
Well, yeah, that's weird. That's just stupid. They shouldn't have done that, but I don't know.
No, I'm just saying, like, if we were to try to surmise an in-story narrative explanation for this, they see the kid wearing the color and they're like, oh, it's like a way to bond with them. I
guess. I mean, that's a huge stretch, but that's probably the only thing that makes any sense whatsoever. Right? Well, I had that written down too. Like, it's like, I know they always wore it and it's so stupid, but it's just like, come on. Like, the only place in the country that ever gets attacked is Angel Grove. Nobody else in the country is like, why are these giant monsters only attacking here? There's these 5 teenagers that wear the same color that are always together and always disappear when the fights happen, and nobody puts it together. It's just like, yeah. I mean, I know you have to suspend disbelief. It's like, come on. I mean, it's kind of like a Clark Kent thing, right? But I mean, at least he's not wearing like blue and red all the time. Like,
that's the thing. And also, especially when we get to the point, and it happens in these episodes, where Bulk and Skull make it their mission to uncover the identities of the Rangers. Yeah. Now, look, we're not dealing with the brain trust here. So the fact that they can't figure it out does make sense. But at the same time, if someone were really trying to figure this out, but it should not be that difficult.
No, not at all. Yeah, I made note of that too. Like, where I forget what they said, but they're like, you hear what they said? They said Rangers, like blah 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 blah, and then they like see the whole thing, and then they still don't know because they're morons. But yeah, but again, as a kid, like, it works. Like, you're like, oh, these idiots.
True. I said this last time, and I'll probably say it every time we talk about episodes. I do not get a lot of mileage out of the Bulk and Skull. I find them very grating now. Whereas as a kid, I didn't mind them. But I mean, how are you finding the Bulk and Skull of it?
I mean, I feel like the same as when I was a kid. Like, they don't really bother me, but they don't add anything. But I feel like they kind of need to be there. It kind of breaks up the. Otherwise, like, if you think about it, like, who else is really on that show? You see Ernie every now and again. There's nobody else. There's no teachers really. There's no anything. Like, there's nothing. Even having the parents is kind of like a weird one. So, like, you have the same 5 people all the time. So I really think they're needed to kind of break that up. Otherwise, it's just nonstop, the main 6.
No, I hear you. I do think that I feel like they do work better here than they do later on. I mean, I remember in the Zeo season in particular, I think was that when they were training to become cops?
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. But like, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, how much mileage can you get out of that? You know what I mean? Like,
right. But what I was going to say is I think we get, if I'm remembering correctly from Zeo, I think we do get to a point where they really have their own storyline. Like, they're the B story or C story, like, in each episode. And I like here where they kind of pop in, maybe once or twice and get a pie in the face. Okay, fine. Like, that's okay. But I think later on when they're carrying more of the episode, that definitely didn't work for me.
Is there like a Japanese version of Bulk and Skull, or is that just strictly in the American? I'm really curious about that.
I don't know. I have to get back to you. on that. But I liked in this Return of an Old Friend the initial tension of the parents being taken, and the Rangers have to make a decision. About whether to hand over their coins, and I thought that was well done.
I was thinking about that, and I was like, Zordon's like, hey, you made the right decision. And I'm like, did they? Like, they kind of just like gave away the fate of the world. I know it's your parents, but like, if left unchecked, they're just going to destroy the world. You're not going to have your parents anyway. So,
I mean, maybe they could have insisted that Goldar release them first. They they weren't necessarily the strongest negotiators, though. I recognize they weren't in a great
all right,
position.
Now keep your word. But yeah, that was another thing. Yeah, I don't know.
But I liked that Zordon let them make that decision. I thought that was a nice touch, and created a very believable and understandable and relatable dilemma for them.
Yeah, Zordon really does kind of like, even when it's like really important, like world changing stuff. He kind of just leaves it in their hands to see, you know, they can learn and make the right decisions. So,
yeah. With this whole business with the parents being taken, it prompted me to think of this question as well. Obviously, it's a kid's show, right? Rita's not going to kill the Rangers. Goldar's not going to kill their parents, right? We're not going to get into that territory. But I don't know. It's like, what would be the in-story explanation for why Rita and Goldar and then later Zed don't go to more extreme measures? Is there a code of honor that they're bound by in this mystical realm or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. You're right. I mean, especially Zed. Like Rita, you know, Zed is pretty like, you know, he gets more down to business for sure, right? Like, I mean, like even with he ultimately got rid of the Green Ranger. He's like, all right, enough messing around. So you're right, but I guess I don't know.
And the other thing too is they see everything. Ken and I talked about this last time. I thought it's so interesting to me that the villains know the Rangers' identities. You would think that would be such an unfair upper hand to have. And it's like, if they did, they could like take them out at any time, really.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. That's like the opposite of every superhero thing ever, right? Like there's no secret identity. There's no nothing, you know, at least to the villains. But even the villains in that don't know. Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, you know, we just have to suspend disbelief.
Yes. I think it's in this two-parter. I could be wrong, but I think it's in this two-parter where the Megazord falls in battle and falls onto a building. It's in one of these episodes. I think it's in this two-parter. You know, it's never addressed, but you know, they probably killed a lot of people.
Yeah. You'd think you'd have like a memorial or something. Yeah.
You'd think Zordon would be like, listen, Rangers, you know, great work. We need to talk about the casualties though.
I wonder if there's like now that we're bringing up all this stuff, like there's got to be like a video out there of like all this like stuff, like holes and like all the destruction they caused. I'm gonna like go on YouTube while we're talking. But it's like I don't know. Again, you know, as a kid, none of this popped in my head, so they probably just like, no one's gonna think about this shit. Parents aren't watching this.
I know. Little did they know there would be and you know, we're one of many Power Rangers podcasts. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, forget it. You know, like you know, we're not even scraping the surface on like what it's become. Like, you know, I know we're talking about 30 years, but like, I mean, you know, these guys haven't really done anything else, and they have entire careers built around being Power Rangers. You know, so it's definitely a resurgence. So
yeah, but anyway, so Tommy re-enters the picture, and Zordon is able to charge him up by transferring some of his interdimensional energy. Right? Because he has the coin that he had given to Jason, and Zordon is able to charge him up. And Tommy is able to retrieve the dragon dagger, which Goldar had taken. And we didn't even talk about that, but they get that by putting Billy under a spell. And he enters the command center, and he takes the
evil Billy.
Yeah.
But you know, Alpha. Yeah.
Yeah, but so Tommy is able to get the coins back and save the day and retain enough power. There's some business about how when he touched the energy field that was around the coins, that seemed to activate something and allow him to retain his powers. Because there's this whole bit where he comes back after that battle and he's out of it. Like it's really taken a toll on his body and he's like unconscious. And then all of a sudden he rises. Very dramatic. I love that.
Yeah, that is interesting. I was thinking about too, like every episode, like Zordon just is like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this thing where we can fix this. I've totally forgot about it till now. It was almost like 66 Batman, where they're in the Batcave and there's like whatever they need that week, like bat, shark propellant, bat, whatever, bat this. It's the same thing with Zordon.
Well, exactly. You know, in the Gung Ho episode, it's like, oh, there are these weapons that can defeat the super putties. And then actually in the next episode that we'll talk about, Green Dream, where Tommy is once again put under a spell, his mission in that episode is to convince the Rangers to summon the Sword of Power.
Yeah.
According to IMDb trivia, like that never comes back.
Yeah, we'll never see it again. Yeah.
You know, there's always, always some device, some weapon, something, and Zordon always knows.
Yeah. Never mentions beforehand though. He's never proactive with any of this stuff.
No, Zordon is definitely very reactive. You know, the other thing that I clocked, this goes back to the Gung Ho episode with the super putties, where Zordon calls up on the viewing globe the creation of the super putties. Like he actually shows Finster putting the clay into, it's the footage that we had just seen.
Yeah.
But
why don't they do that all the time, right?
That's the thing. I'm like, you can see onto Rita's moon base.
You can see everything.
And Rita can see everything with her telescope. It's just, I guess that's the thing. Like, this is not a game of subterfuge. It's like each side knows what the other is doing. It's really this battle of wills.
Yeah. Yeah. This is funny. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird dynamic.
But anyway, yeah. So, I mean, at the end of this, we get Tommy back. You know what, man? I give the show credit. I know that they only had so much footage to work with, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure if they had an endless supply of Green Ranger footage, maybe this whole waning power bit would not have been part of it. But I don't care the reason. I think this put a really like melancholy spin on it. That he's back, but look, it's not forever.
Yeah, it kept you from like, it's, most shows, by the end of the episode, everything's resolved and back to normal. Like, and that was never the case here. Like, you never knew if he was actually gone or he's coming back, or so. I agree with you. They really did do a good job, especially going back. Like, we're saying, oh, it's a kid's show, but that works both ways. Like, a lot of this stuff is pretty heavy, for a kid's show. So.
Yeah, no, I give them credit. And then so after this, we get the Green Dream, where again Zed and Goldar are trying to accelerate this process and once again abduct Tommy. And again, put him under a spell. And going back to
spells,
and going back to callbacks. I mean, like the Rangers, when they realize, what Tommy has done, when he tricks them into calling forth the sword, and then he disappears, and they're like, "I can't believe this is happening again." Like, I really feel for them.
Yeah,
it would have been like, I feel like it would have been cool if Tommy had been able to resist because he had been under a spell before, or something like that.
Through. Yeah, that would be cool. But you're right. They're stuck with whatever footage they had, unfortunately, for the most part. But at this point, though, like the show's big. Like you figure they could splice in some new footage or something.
Well, I
know they do in parts rather.
Yeah, because there was a point where they actually commissioned from the Japanese show. Like they actually commissioned specific like fighting footage.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I don't know the extent of it. And for people listening, I'm sure there are some of you out there who know way more about this than I do, and always feel free to reach out. I would love to know. I'm doing my research as we're going and learning a lot, and it's kind of fascinating to see this whole other side of it that I was like oblivious to, certainly as a kid, and now to see how some of this stuff fits together is definitely interesting. But yeah, I was like, I felt bad for Tommy. Like this guy is just used by these villains. And Goldar in particular, I feel like in these episodes, especially when we get into the Zed territory, like Goldar's really got it out for him.
Oh, I know. Yeah. He's like personal with it. You're right. In the Zed arc, definitely. He seems a lot more aggressive, Goldar, for whatever reason.
Yeah. Although I had this funny thought. I'm jumping ahead to the Green No More, where Goldar and Tommy are facing off in the field, and Goldar's ready to banish Tommy into time loop or whatever. And I said to myself, like, this is gonna sound stupid, but part of me feels like Goldar just wants to be Tommy's friend. There was this moment where I was like, this would be hilarious if Goldar was like, I just want to be your friend. Like, I don't know. I feel like, clearly that's not the intention. I totally understand that, but I just said, I don't know. Like he's like really fixated on Tommy. And I don't know.
I guess just because like they created Tommy and it was Rita's thing, and blah 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 blah. They want it back. Because I was having the same feelings too, and I was thinking about that. Like, why do they care so much about? Why aren't they trying to steal the Red Ranger? But then I was like, they want their property back.
All right, so that takes us to, I know we still have Missing Green in the last episode that we watched, but the last big two-parter, right? Green No More. Mm-hmm. Because in this now, of course, even with Green Dream, like we're into season 2, we're into Zed, we're into that era of the show. So it's not Rita creating the candle, but it's Zed. But this time Zed has candles for all the Rangers.
Yeah. But they didn't explain it, right? Because like in the old one, they said like, Tommy touched it when he was working for Rita and blah, 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 blah. So how did they get the candles for them? Yeah.
No, that's the thing. And Zed also has the power to and does transport the Rangers to his other realm, where their morphers don't work. It's like you can transport them there. You can
yeah. Why didn't you do this every episode, right? Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, and so there's a lot going on in this Green No More, right? So we have. Wait, I conflated something, right? The candles are in Missing Green, right? Not Green No More.
Yeah, Missing Green is the first ones with Zed.
No, that's the last episode that we watched.
So
it
has to be.
Yeah, so the point still stands. Like, Zed was able to do this. But yeah, that's actually in Missing Green. In Green No More, this is where we have the Dark Rangers, and Zed transports them to this other realm, and he's got this crystal, right, that's siphoning off the rest of Tommy's powers, and then so using it to create his Dark Rangers. So, and then there's Turban Shell, the monster that they're fighting. There's a lot going on here. I was so surprised that we went through this whole business of creating the Dark Rangers. Nothing happens.
To be seen again. Yeah, nothing happens, never to be seen again. Yeah.
I don't know. I was again, IMDb trivia apparently, and this makes sense because I was like, those costumes look awful. They were repainted putty costumes.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of was the putties, and I'm like, why they don't have anything else? But that makes sense that they repainted them then.
And because, well, that's what I was thinking. Like, you couldn't have taken Ranger costumes and like darkened them or something. But I guess maybe they couldn't. Like, maybe they didn't have the budget for that.
That's so crazy to me because now we're in season 3 at this point.
So this is still 2.
Or is it 2? It's still 2. Yeah, when Zed shows up. So like, it's just so crazy that there's that many episodes before season 2. But they had to have had a budget at this point. This is the biggest show in the world at this point. You can make some costumes like. I know people that do that in their spare time. There's cosplayers that do that in their bedroom. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I don't know.
But according to the trivia, those repainted putty costumes were not durable enough for battle.
What a surprise!
So that's why they just stand there. It's so funny. But I gotta say, out of all the like badass Tommy moments, I think this one takes the cake when he's in this other realm, powerless, and he's fighting first the monster. And then Goldar, and he's alone. Like, he's just alone in this never-ending field. And he doesn't have his powers, and he holds his own.
Yeah, that really solidifies it for sure. And he says something about that at the end, right? Like, it wasn't always the powers or whatever. It was, my relationships with you guys, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. No, that was a cool touch.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And again, going back to Goldar, I mean, Goldar really was giving it to him like psychological warfare. He's showing him clips, all the great stuff he's done. It's like, you'll never do this again. It's like, oh man, like this poor kid. He's just a kid.
Yeah, they got a lot of footage. They're just like call stuff up on demand.
I know as a kid you're watching this, it's like, man, I wish I could do this. I could actually go back and watch these episodes.
Yeah. There's no DVR, but need Goldar.
Yeah, but no, Tommy, he's got, one moment in particular with Goldar where he's like, gets serious, hang time in the air as he's flipping and he really, that was cool. That was really
cool. He's the
cool.
best. I mean, that's it. He's the best.
There's some time travel involved as well.
Yeah, that really stood out to me too. I was like, do you know, like, do they ever do any other time travel stuff in the future? I don't remember anything else, but. I
mean, I do remember later on, there's the Return of the Green Ranger, 3-parter where they do go back in time, but as far as something like this, I don't think so. Also, I don't know that the time travel mechanics quite work out, but we'll let that slide.
yeah, that makes sense. Whatever.
And my other favorite part about this, my genuine favorite part was Tommy holding his own in that field, and then like you said, the lesson that he's learned at the end. I really think that, especially for kids, right? It's not, this is kind of like my other podcast, Digging for Kryptonite. I end every episode by saying, it's a Superman quote, it's about what you do, it's about action. Same type of thing here. Like, it's not what costume you have, what color ranger you are, what power. It's what you do. And you saw Tommy at really his lowest, his, in theory, weakest, and he was still able to win the day. So I like that. The thing that made me laugh, though, was Tommy goes back to Zed's other world, other realm, to destroy the green crystal, right? And once he does that, then the Rangers morphers work again, and the Dark Rangers are no longer a threat. Do you watch the Pitch Meeting YouTube series by any chance?
I think I've seen like a clip here and there, but I don't actively watch it.
They're hilarious. Shout out to Ryan George, the guy who does it. They're so funny. And there's this running bit in every episode where the executive, is talking to the writer. He plays both people. And, the writer, is like, oh, the character will do this, this, and this. And the executive is like, oh, is that going to be really difficult? And he goes, no, super easy, barely an inconvenience. That's what I felt like watching this. It's like Tommy's like, he's got to go back into the dimension. He's got to get past Zed, and Goldar's got to destroy this crystal. He just teleports in. It's right there. He smashes it, and that's it.
we got 2 minutes left of show. Make it work.
It was barely an inconvenience.
Like you said, he can teleport then, but before they need all this other stuff to get there, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I know we talked a little bit about the Zords, but one of the things that we see I think this is going back to Green Candle. Forgive me if I'm mixing up episodes, but
it is a blur.
But you actually get to see Tommy in the Dragon Zord, which was exceedingly rare. I don't know if they ever did it otherwise.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Even in the intro, that's something I noticed too. That like when they show him standing on the head of the Dragon Zord, it's like so clearly just like a crappy little action figure, like glued on, and I just never noticed that before either.
I went on YouTube. I was looking for behind the scenes footage of the Zord battles.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually found some stuff. It is rare. The YouTube title tells you that as well. Very rare footage. And it's just like, very grainy, like behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's just guys in these costumes and, the little miniature buildings and vehicles and stuff. Like but it's wild to see, what it actually looks like.
Basically just Godzilla,
same
thing.
But I said this last time, I'll probably keep saying it. I still take that over the CGI that they do in the modern episodes.
Oh yeah, 100%. It holds, as cheesy as it is and stuff like that, it holds up. It's the same thing when you watch 80s movies and it's just puppets and stuff like that. It still looks good. And then CGI from even like a decade ago looks horrid,
Yeah.
So I agree. Practical always.
Yeah. And then so the last episode we watched, Missing Green. I know we've been talking about aspects of it. So yeah, this is the one with the candle, and Jason has to redeem himself, I guess, where the other 4 Rangers are taken and imprisoned in the dark dimension or a version of it, and the candles are going to burn out. And Jason has to face off with the monster that we by himself, and he does it in his own. He does it by himself. It's a solo Zord battle.
Yeah. That was the first time. Like I forget what he. Remind me again, like I knew all this stuff like the back of my hand, but like why do the Thunder Zords, I just noticed in that one particular episode, like it changes from the Tyrannosaurus to the Thunder Zord, and he summons it and he's like, Tyrannosaurus, Red Dragon, Thunder Zord power. Like what was the deal with that? Do you remember?
I don't
remember that being the case all the time. I feel like they just summoned the new version later on. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm not totally clear. I also know though, and I think I came across this on IMDb, that I think maybe it was this instance where it was a flub, because like, I don't know if you noticed in this episode, but when Jason is morphed, that's not Austin St. John's voice.
Oh yeah, something. It sounded like he was like talking from far away or yelling or something was way off with it. Yeah, what's the deal with that? Because that did catch my ear.
I mean, we're getting into the period of time where the actors playing Jason, Trini, and Zach had left, and then we were just seeing archived, recycled footage, and stunt people in the suits with other voice actors dubbing them over.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
But we're still a bit ahead of that, so I don't know if that was what was going on here, because it's still like in White Light, for example. They're still there and everything. Yeah. So I don't know. for sure, but that was
been
not
sick
him.
that day, or maybe they did an overdub like after they shot the other stuff, and like who the hell knows? Could have been anything, but yeah, I definitely noticed something. It sounded like him, but not him.
Yeah,
that was weird.
But he had his moment of redemption, and then we got to see, or the Rangers got to see via the viewing globe, Tommy at his uncle's cabin in white.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
He was clad in white and writing a letter to the Rangers, letting them know that he's going to be all right. He doesn't blame Jason. Yeah. And he wants Jason to win the tournament that he's practicing for. It's like, you can do it, Jace. And Jason does. He's not fighting anyone. It's just demonstrating the technique.
Yeah.
And he does it so well, they instantly give him the award. And they, Zach and Billy hoist him up into the air. And he's like, "This is for Tommy, wherever you are." And you feel like the rest of the people, they were probably, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Yeah, right. Also, I was thinking about that too. Like, Tommy just disappears a lot. Like, nobody questions, like, he's not in school, he's not this, he's not that. Like, he's just gone. Every time something happens, he's just out of Angel Grove. Like,
well, like, that's interesting. And look, in fairness, I know we didn't watch all the episodes in between.
Yeah.
But my sense, I could be totally wrong, but my sense is that after Green Candle, I think the idea is that he's there. Like, we're just not seeing him, but that he's still like there in the world. Right.
Yeah.
But then, definitely in this missing Green episode, like he's just left, like he's, off at his uncle's cabin, but yeah, like he does disappear. And also in the Parents' Day episode, like you see everyone's parents, but his, what's his deal?
He's just like an orphan or something. Like he's just a loner. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. All of that was like jumping around in my head while I'm watching this. I'm like, what's his deal? Like he just, nobody cares if he's gone. He doesn't follow any rules. He just showed up, right? Like when with Green with Evil, he just shows up, right? Like
yeah.
So yeah.
Well, they make a point about how he just like he's the new kid.
Yeah.
Presumably just moved to town, but at least he's new in school. Like they say that much at least. I don't know. This is one of the reasons why I'm excited to get into the comics, because I think my understanding is we definitely get more personal development and maybe some more personal backstory and things like that. So I'm excited because clearly, look, as we've talked about, there are a lot of opportunities to really flesh out a lot of these pieces. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Anything else that you want to talk about? Anything that we didn't get to that you wanted to?
No, I mean, I guess we went over everything. I will say that I never, ever, ever for the rest of my life will get sick of hearing the Dragon Dagger noises. Every time he uses that thing, it's just like, I don't know. It's just awoken something inside of me. I love that. I love that weapon. It's just so cool. Yeah, it's good. I'm definitely going to rewatch this entire series now for sure. At least like the Mighty Morphin run. I don't really care about the rest of it. But yeah, I'm curious about the comics. I'm excited to listen to those episodes when you get there. I'm definitely gonna dive into all those. But yeah. Oh, you know what? One random fun fact. Do you know? Like, I noticed because we do a lot of conventions and stuff. So like, I've spent a good amount of time around pretty much all the Rangers who are still with us. And I never noticed that Zach is missing like fingers.
Yeah.
Is he missing them in the show?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know how. I never noticed that before until like last year.
So I can't take any credit, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record with this friggin' IMDb trivia, but it was very helpful to me because they do mention that and how, I mean, certainly when it's the Japanese footage of the Black Ranger, of course, he's got all his fingers, but even when it's American footage of the Rangers, but it's the stunt double, you can see all the fingers. I was trying to notice it it was hard to
I couldn't see him missing ever. But so I guess it was like a birth defect or something. Not to get off track. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he was born that way or if there's an accident or something like that. But I think he's missing a. Well, I don't know if it's multiple. I thought it was just one.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't remember. But I remember I went to like shake his hand or something, and I was like, wait a second, he's got no finger. Unless it's his thumb, or I don't know. We're getting off track. But yeah, I was really curious about that because I spent all the episodes trying to see his fingers, and I never noticed.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of what you do in conventions, so in addition to owning Undiscovered Realm, gaming and Funko Pop store, which I encourage everyone to check out. I mean, certainly if you're in the Westchester area, it's in White Plains, New York, or online, right? Is it undiscoveredrealm.com?
Yeah.
I hope people will check that out. You also own the tattoo shop Addicted to Ink. So if anyone has tattoo needs and you're in the Westchester area.
Somewhere, I got a Green Ranger tattoo. See? I'm a hardcore fan. Yeah, this is one of the first tattoos I got, actually. Even like way after I hadn't watched it in forever, but I was like, it was always with me. So yeah.
And I'm like, did I never notice that?
I don't know if you guys can see. Are people going to see this video?
No, they won't.
It's just audio.
Just audio.
Good. I was going to apologize again. I just moved, so like behind me is just a mess, and I got the desk set up, and everything else is in a pile. But yeah, I have a whole back of my forearm Green Ranger tattoo.
That's awesome.
Got the dagger. Yeah, I love it.
You know, I was going to say with, you know, in addition to the stores, you also put on Undiscovered Con.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had the good fortune to be able to moderate a panel with Johnny Young Bosch and Catherine Sutherland. And that was, you know, you talk about surreal experiences, to be up on stage with them and to be asking them questions about the episodes and the movie and stuff like that. It was so fun. It was, you know, again, very surreal. But like you said, you've met and in like that case, like worked with, like you booked them as guests. I'm just curious. I mean, any specific encounters with any of the Rangers that come to mind that either were particularly meaningful or surprising, or like they told you something about the show or something that you were like, oh, I can't believe that. Was anything that really stands out?
No, not really. You know, like when they're out with the crowds and stuff like that, they're on, you know, like you kind of get to see when you're booking them or you're dealing with them behind the scenes, you really get more of a sense of how they are as people. Some people are definitely more diva-like than you would think. And then other people are just like really cool. So that's always interesting. Like I've literally had like, you know, Rangers call me on my cell phone and like, you know, like, it's just like a weird thing. Like I remember I was in the car with my wife at the time and like, the second Red Ranger, Steve Cardenas, he like called me up to ask a question about something. And she's like, so does a Power Ranger just call you? Like, what the hell? And it's weird, right? Like you kind of get used to it, but like, it's still surreal. Like you said, like you could go back and tell a little kid, Anthony, that you're going to be on stage interviewing these two Rangers when you're in the theater watching the movie. You'd be like, what? You know? So yeah, it's weird. Yeah, some of them are nicer people than others, but they're all pretty cool. Yeah, it's been fun, you know, getting to dive behind the curtain.
I won't ask who the most difficult is. I think I know, but I won't ask. But who, like, would you say, like, who stood out the most as being just like really nice or down to earth or like more personable than you expected?
Catherine Sutherland is by far the nicest. She's a sweetheart. Not that the other ones aren't nice. You know, like David Yost, super nice guys. He's kind of neurotic. He is kind of Billy like, very particular. Like things need to be how he needs them, or he's not happy. But not in a bad way. Just that's his personality type. Jason David Frank is really cool. I mean, you know, he's my favorite by far. But yeah, I mean, they're all cool in their own way. I've spent the most time around Steve Cardenas, because like he's good friends with a good friend of mine. So like when during the pandemic, like he was kind of like just couch surfing because he lives in England now and he had to stay here because he was getting his vaccine and he had to wait for both doses before he could go back to England. So he's literally just staying on my friend's couch, or in his spare bedroom or something. I don't know, for like a month. And, you know, it's funny, like Power Rangers just at his house for a month straight. So like, you know, I've eaten around him. You know, it's funny. Like, so yeah. They're all cool though in their own ways. Zach is very much Zach. Like he does his little dances and he still does all that stuff. Like there's surprisingly, now that you mention it, like there's a lot of their real personalities in their characters, to be honest. And Kimberly is really short. That's the other takeaway. Like it's crazy. She is tiny. I don't know how tall she is, but she's got to be like 5 feet tall. So, but yeah. Anyway, they're all cool.
Very cool. All right, man. Listen, thank you very much for doing this. This was so much fun. I thank you for taking the time to watch and to have this discussion.
Yeah, no, thanks for you know, giving me a reason to rewatch everything, and now I'm definitely going to watch the rest. And I'm excited to hear the rest of these episodes as a fan. So I can't wait. Awesome.
Well, everyone, make sure you check out Undiscovered Realm. Check out Addicted to Ink. And yeah, man, make sure you come back next month. We are going to start diving into the Boom Studios Mighty Morphin Power Ranger series. That'll be our next couple of episodes, which will bring us to the end of 2022. And we'll just keep rolling on from there. So make sure you come back then. And until then, have a Morphin month. Support the show and receive exclusive additional content, including my DC movie rewatch podcast at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Thank you to all patrons for enabling me to produce this show. Also, be sure to explore the other shows within the Flat Squirrel Podcast Network, which is home to Digging for Kryptonite, another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman, Summoning the Zords, and My Comic Shop History, all hosted by yours truly. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts. Visit flatsquirrelproductions.com for more.